would you have a ban, like Donald Trump suggested in America? Would you have a ban on Muslims entering the country, new Muslims trying to have a home in this country?
I believe we need to protect the British public right now.
So what's the answer to the question?
British Muslims?
Yeah, the British public. I didn't say British non-Muslim public. I said the British public.
Tommy Robinson, a figure whose name is synonymous with controversy in British politics, has never been one to shy away from making bold, often inflammatory statements. His latest target is UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, whom Robinson has accused of weak leadership.
The parties have been talking about immigration, but what does the public think? Well, an exclusive poll for Sky News has found that across the country, 43% of people asked thought that immigration has a negative impact on British society. That's compared to 35% here who say it has a positive impact. So clear difference.
And being the root cause of the recent anti-immigration riots sweeping across the country. Robinson's critique is scathing, attributing the violence and unrest directly to Starmer's failure to adequately address the long-standing immigration issues that have plagued the UK. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Robinson, born Stephen Yaxley Lennon, is the founder of the English Defence League, EDL, a far-right organization known for its anti-Islamic rhetoric and protests.
You would ban all Muslims?
I would temporarily halt Muslim immigration to this country until we get a grip of the problem. I differentiate Muslims from Islam.
Right.
Okay?
But what you don't do...
differentiate Muslims
Muslims
from
are people. Islam is an idea.
Yeah.
Islam's an idea. A bad idea.
And
Islam is a
Muslims
faith.
follow
No, it's an idea.
It's a faith.
It's an idea that you can change your mind.
Though Robinson's views and methods have been widely condemned by many as extremist, he continues to maintain a substantial following, especially among those who feel disenfranchised and frustrated by the current political climate. His attacks on Starmer are not merely the product of a personal vendetta, but reflect a broader dissatisfaction with the Labour government's handling of immigration.
52% of people said they think Labour aren't telling the truth about what they really think about immigration. Not much better for the Conservatives, only 49% here, so not a big difference, saying the same thing about them. The Lib Dems doing slightly better, maybe they spelt it out better. But every region, every demographic distrusted the main two parties here on this point.
And its perceived failure to protect the interests of British citizens. Immigration has long been a contentious issue in the UK, with debates often centered around the balance between welcoming refugees and migrants and maintaining control over the country's borders. In recent years, the debate has intensified, driven by global migration crises, economic challenges, and rising nationalism.
I have a great deal of sympathy with those who are so desperate as to put their children in dinghies or even children's paddling pools and try to cross the channel. But I have to say that what they are doing is falling prey to criminal gangs, and they are breaking the law. They're also undermining the legitimate claims of others who would seek asylum in this country.
The UK's exit from the European Union, commonly known as Brexit, was in many ways a reflection of these concerns, with immigration control being one of the key issues that drove voters to support leaving the EU. Despite Brexit, the issue of immigration has not been resolved to the satisfaction of many. The influx of migrants, particularly from conflict-ridden regions, has continued, leading to growing tensions within communities.
A word as well, Theo, on the border force yesterday, UK border force returning Channel migrants to France for the first time. This sparked I'm sure you're more than aware of this, it sparked a lot of people saying, wow, they're actually doing what Reform UK said they should do. They're returning migrants back to France. But of course, the story, as it turned out, wasn't quite as black and white as that.
These tensions have been exacerbated by economic pressures, with many citizens feeling that resources are being stretched thin and that their needs are being overlooked in favor of accommodating newcomers. Robinson's critique of Starmer hinges on the idea that the Prime Minister has failed to take decisive action to address these concerns. He argues that Starmer's policies have been too lenient, and that his government has prioritized the rights and welfare of immigrants over those of native Britons.
We run down the beach, we see dozens of people, men, women and children, all from Kurdistan, intent on reaching Britain. They're waiting for their ride, called a taxi boat, a smuggler's dinghy that's already picked up dozens of passengers.
According to Robinson, this perceived neglect has led to a situation where citizens feel compelled to take matters into their own hands, resulting in the anti-immigration riots that have erupted in various parts of the country. Keir Starmer, who became the leader of the Labour Party in April 2020, has faced significant challenges during his tenure. He inherited a party that was deeply divided following the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn and the fallout from Brexit. Starmer's task has been to unify the party, regain the trust of voters, and present a credible alternative to the Conservative government.
Age groups, 54% of 18 to 24-year-olds thinks that immigration has a positive effect. But the older you get, the lower this number comes down. When you get to 65 and over, only 20% of these people thought immigration is good for society.
However, his leadership has been criticized by some as being overly cautious and lacking in vision. Robinson's attack on Starmer is part of a broader narrative that paints the Prime Minister as weak and ineffective. Robinson accuses Starmer of being more concerned with appeasing progressive elements within his party and the broader political establishment than with addressing the real issues facing the country. He argues that Starmer's reluctance to take a firm stance on immigration has emboldened those who seek to exploit the system and has alienated ordinary citizens who feel that their voices are not being heard.
Tommy Robinson fancies himself an activist and journalist known for provocative statements like this.
We don't have to stop radical Muslims, we have to stop Islam. I've caused a breach of peace, I'm being arrested.
A Facebook live stream ultimately got him arrested, reporting in his own way outside a trial covered by a publication ban.
The riots, according to Robinson, are a direct consequence of this perceived leadership failure. He suggests that the unrest is not merely a spontaneous outburst of anger, but a symptom of deeper societal discontent. By failing to control immigration and to address the concerns of the British people, Robinson claims, Starmer has created a situation where violence has become a means of expressing frustration and demanding change.
Show some respect.
Show some respect.
Show some respect.
Have you read this book?
For people.
Have you read this book?
There are over a billion people.
There are 100 verses in this book that incite violence and murder against us.
Show some damn respect for people's religious beliefs, right?
I should show some respect for a book that incites murder against me. And
put it down.
And calls me an animal. No, I won't put it down.
Robinson's critique of Starmer can also be understood within the broader context of populism, a political approach that seeks to appeal to the interests and concerns of the general population, often by pitting the people against the elite. Populism thrives on the perception that the ruling class is out of touch with the needs and desires of ordinary citizens, and Robinson has effectively tapped into this sentiment. By framing Starmer as part of an out-of-touch elite, Robinson positions himself as a champion of the common man, someone who is willing to speak the truth and to challenge the status quo. His rhetoric is designed to resonate with those who feel that their concerns about immigration are being ignored or dismissed by the political establishment.
That if you come here illegally, you can't claim asylum. You can't benefit from our modern slavery protections. You can't make spurious human rights claims. And you can't stay.
People, along with everyone else, who are trying to process exactly what this means, not just for British politics or international law, but for them.
This populist approach is not new. It has been a central feature of Robinson's activism for years, and has contributed to his enduring appeal among certain segments of the population. However, while Robinson's message may resonate with some, it also raises important questions about the dangers of inflaming tensions and encouraging divisiveness. His rhetoric often blurs the line between legitimate critique and incitement, and there is a risk that his words could further exacerbate the very issues he claims to be addressing. The recent riots, which Robinson blames on Starmer.
That is the taxi boat that's just arrived to pick these people up. That boat is already really full, but as you can see, they're marching out through the water. Now, the reason they're doing that is they know the police can't stop them once they're in the water, but actually, there's not a police officer to be seen.
Can also be seen as a manifestation of the kind of division and unrest that populist rhetoric can fuel. The debate over immigration is far from straightforward, and reducing it to a simple matter of right versus wrong or citizens versus immigrants fails to capture the complexity of the issue. Immigration involves a range of economic, social, and humanitarian considerations.
One of those accused of using misinformation to fan the flames of anger, Tommy Robinson, the anti-Islam campaigner and convicted criminal, is one of the UK's most prominent far-right activists. Thomas Daigle has covered Tommy Robinson, for years.
And finding a balance that addresses the needs of all parties is a formidable challenge for any government. On one hand, there are legitimate concerns about the impact of immigration on jobs, public services, and social cohesion. Many people feel that the UK's immigration policies have been too lax and that the country has been overwhelmed by the number of migrants seeking to enter. These concerns are often heightened by media coverage that emphasizes the negative aspects of immigration, such as crime and welfare dependency. On the other hand, there are also compelling arguments in favor of immigration. The UK, like many developed countries, faces an aging population and a shrinking workforce, both of which could be alleviated by welcoming young, skilled migrants.
People thought that immigration would increase under both a Labour, that's what they're talking about here, and under the Conservative government, whatever it is, despite believing that the policies of the parties is to reduce it. And finally, respondents also thought that cutting immigration would have a negative impact on the NHS, on hospitality, and on social care, but a positive impact here on housing and the housing crisis.
Moreover, the UK has a long tradition of providing refuge to those fleeing persecution and conflict, and many believe that this humanitarian responsibility should not be abandoned. Keir Starmer's approach to immigration has sought to strike a balance between these competing considerations. However, in doing so, he has faced criticism from both sides of the debate. For those who, like Robinson, believe that the government is not doing enough to control immigration, Starmer's policies are seen as weak and ineffective. Meanwhile, others argue that the government's approach is too harsh and that it fails to uphold the UK's commitments to human rights and international law.
You could say Tommy Robinson has been laying the groundwork, fanning anger, especially towards Muslims and immigrants, for his followers for years now, and all that was needed was a spark, and sadly that came last week with that mass stabbing and the deaths of 3 young children in Southport, England. What did Tommy Robinson say about all this? Unapologetically, in his words, "Don't say I didn't warn you."
The anti-immigration riots that have erupted in recent months are a stark reminder of the deep divisions that exist within British society. These riots have been characterized by violent clashes between protesters and police, widespread property damage, and a general atmosphere of fear and hostility. For many, the riots are a sign that the UK is at a breaking point, with tensions over immigration threatening to tear the country apart. Robinson's argument that these riots are a direct result of Starmer's leadership failures is contentious.
Christianity,
Like Scientology.
it's like all faiths.
Like
It's a
Scientology?
religion, it's a faith.
Like Scientology?
So, Tommy,
an idea.
if you
It's
accept,
an ideology.
if you're saying that the problem is with Islam, are you accepting that you're Islamophobic?
Because there are 100 verses
Just
in this...
yes or no,
Okay.
are you Islamophobic?
There's no such word as Islamophobia.
While it is true that the government's handling of immigration has been a source of frustration for many, it is also important to recognize that the causes of the riots are complex and multifaceted. Factors such as economic inequality, social exclusion, and the influence of extremist groups all play a role in fueling unrest. Moreover, it is worth considering the role that Robinson himself and others like him have played in contributing to the current climate of tension and division. By stoking fears about immigration and framing the issue in terms of a conflict between us and them, Robinson has arguably helped to create the conditions in which violence and unrest can flourish. His insistence on blaming Starmer for the riots may therefore be seen as an attempt to deflect attention from his own role in exacerbating the situation.
We don't want any more mosques in this country.
Just look at how Robinson first became known more than a decade ago, by leading chaotic rallies with the self-styled English Defence League, a group promoting British values over what it considered creeping Sharia law.
In response to the criticism from Robinson and others, Keir Starmer has sought to defend his government's record on immigration and to reaffirm his commitment to finding solutions that are fair and just. Starmer has argued that the UK must uphold its values of compassion and inclusivity while also ensuring that immigration is managed in a way that benefits the country as a whole. One of the key elements of Starmer's approach has been to emphasize the importance of international cooperation in addressing the root causes of migration. This includes working with other countries to tackle issues such as conflict, poverty, and climate change, which are driving people to leave their homes in search of a better life. Starmer has also called for a more compassionate approach to asylum seekers and refugees.
Released from prison in 2018, Robinson gave few interviews.
All the mainstream media do is lie.
But a primetime spot on Fox News confirmed his audience had reached global proportions.
The minute you mention criticise Islam, you are deemed and attacked by everybody.
Arguing that the UK has a moral obligation to help those in need. At the same time, Starmer has recognized the need for greater control over the UK's borders and for policies that ensure immigration is sustainable and in the best interests of the country. This has included measures to strengthen border security, crack down on illegal immigration, and ensure that immigrants who come to the UK are able to contribute positively to society. However, balancing these competing priorities is no easy task, and it remains to be seen whether Starmer's approach will be enough to quell the unrest and address the underlying issues that have fueled the recent riots.
Somebody that basically, you are an Islamophobe who hates Islam.
No, I don't.
You basically think all Muslims are to blame. We've seen you on video saying it. And what you're doing now is deliberately inflammatory. It is deliberately poisonous.
How's this inflammatory?
And you are having the complete opposite effect to the one that you say you have.
William Gladstone.
You are stirring up hatred. You are abusing people's religion.
The challenge for Starmer is to demonstrate that his government is capable of managing immigration in a way that is both fair and effective, while also addressing the broader social and economic issues that are contributing to division and discontent. The conflict between Tommy Robinson and Keir Starmer over immigration is emblematic of a much wider political divide that has been growing in the UK for years. This divide is not merely about policy differences, but reflects a fundamental clash of values and visions for the country's future. On one side, there are those like Robinson, who advocate for a hardline approach to immigration and emphasize the need to protect British identity and sovereignty. On the other, there are those who, like Starmer, seek to navigate the complexities of global migration.
If you come here illegally, you will be detained and swiftly removed. People need to know that coming here illegally on a boat will not lead them to a life in the United Kingdom.
The government's message of deterrence is echoing round the migrant camps of Dunkirk, literally.
With an eye towards humanitarian obligations, economic realities, and the need for international cooperation. The broader political implications of this clash are significant, particularly in the context of the UK's evolving political landscape. Since the Brexit referendum in 2016, the country has been grappling with the consequences of its decision to leave the European Union, and immigration has been a central issue in this debate. Brexit was, in many ways, a vote against the perceived loss of control over national borders and a desire to regain sovereignty. However, the reality of implementing this vision has proven to be far more complicated than many anticipated.
When his retrial got underway, with the threat of prison time looming, his supporters showed they'll have his back. And when he speaks his mind, they'll listen.
So just to be clear, Tommy Robinson hasn't been involved in the riots this week on the ground himself.
No, the irony here is he's been thousands of kilometers away posting about these riots.
Robinson's critique of Starmer taps into the lingering frustrations that many Brexit supporters feel. Despite the promises of greater control and reduced immigration, the post-Brexit reality has been marked by continued debates and uncertainties over how best to manage the UK's borders. The perceived gap between the expectations set during the Brexit campaign and the outcomes delivered by successive governments has created fertile ground for populist figures like Robinson to rally support by claiming that the political establishment, including Starmer, has failed to deliver on its promises. This growing divide has also had a significant impact on the political fortunes of the Labour Party under Starmer's leadership. While Labour has traditionally been seen as the party of the working class,
this summer has seen record numbers of illegal immigrants making their way to Britain in boats. A record 409 people were found on vessels yesterday and intercepted by Border Force control. Calm seas and clear skies has meant that the UK has become a top target for people traffickers in 2020.
Its stance on immigration and other social issues has alienated some of its traditional base, particularly in the so-called Red Wall constituencies in northern England. These areas, which historically supported Labour, swung heavily towards the Conservatives in the 2019 general election, largely due to concerns over Brexit and immigration. Starmer's challenge has been to win back these voters while also appealing to more progressive elements within his party. The rise of populist movements and leaders, both in the UK and globally, can be seen as a response to the perceived failures of traditional political institutions to address the concerns of ordinary citizens. Figures like Robinson thrive on the sense of disenfranchisement and disillusionment that many people feel towards the political establishment. By positioning themselves as outsiders who are willing to speak uncomfortable truths,
like-minded firebrand Ezra Levant offered Robinson a platform on his alternative network, Rebel Media.
Who are you?
Racking up millions of views with stunts like this.
You're scum. You're defending child rapists.
Antagonizing the accused and their families outside rape trials.
Populists can galvanize support among those who feel that their voices are not being heard. However, the populist approach also carries significant risks, particularly when it comes to fostering division and undermining social cohesion. Robinson's rhetoric, which often emphasizes a binary conflict between the people and the elite, risks deepening existing fractures within British society. By framing immigration as an existential threat to the nation's identity and security, Robinson and others like him contribute to an atmosphere of fear and hostility that can lead to violence and unrest, as seen in the recent riots. Media coverage plays a crucial role in shaping public perception of immigration and political leadership. The way in which issues are framed, the language used, and the narratives promoted can significantly influence public opinion, and by extension, the political landscape. In the case of the ongoing debate over immigration and Keir Starmer's leadership,
the UK is struggling to deport over 1,000 illegal immigrants back to the countries they came from, according to government ministers. The Home Office said a backlog of over 1,000 people had formed in attempting to remove them from the UK back to countries where they had already claimed asylum.
Media portrayals have been a double-edged sword. On one hand, sections of the media that align with Robinson's views have amplified his criticisms of Starmer, portraying the Prime Minister as weak and ineffective. These outlets often highlight instances of criminal activity by immigrants, or emphasize the strain that immigration places on public services, thereby reinforcing the narrative that the government has lost control of the situation. This kind of coverage not only legitimizes Robinson's rhetoric, but also contributes to a climate of fear and resentment among the public. On the other hand, more mainstream and progressive media outlets have sought to challenge Robinson's narrative by emphasizing the complexities of immigration and the importance of compassion and inclusivity. These outlets often criticize Robinson's views as xenophobic and dangerous, warning that his approach could lead to further division and unrest. They also highlight the contributions that immigrants make to the UK, both economically and culturally, in an effort to counter the negative stereotypes that are often promoted by populist figures. The media's role in this debate is not just about informing the public, but also about shaping the discourse in ways that can influence policy and political outcomes.
Across Europe, migration is resurging as a key political battleground. It's propelling support for far-right parties and is fomenting spats between EU member states, aggravating divides between the countries migrants travel through and those they want to reach.
The polarization of the media landscape means that different segments of the population are receiving very different messages about immigration and leadership, which in turn reinforces existing divisions. For Starmer, navigating this media environment is a significant challenge, as he must balance the need to address legitimate concerns about immigration with the need to counter the divisive rhetoric that threatens social cohesion. Public perception is also influenced by the broader cultural and social context in which these debates take place. The UK has seen significant demographic and cultural changes over the past few decades, driven in part by immigration. While these changes have enriched the country in many ways,
Christianity,
like Scientology,
it's like all faiths.
Like
it's a religion, it's a faith.
Like Scientology?
So, Tommy, if you accept,
it's an ideology.
If you're saying that the problem is with Islam, are you accepting that you're Islamophobic?
Because there are 100 verses in this...
Yes or no?
Okay.
Are you Islamophobic?
There's no such word as Islamophobia.
they have also led to a sense of uncertainty and anxiety for some, particularly in communities that feel they have been left behind by economic globalization and cultural shifts. This sense of unease can be exploited by populist leaders who offer simple solutions to complex problems and who promise to restore a sense of order and security. The current debate over immigration and leadership in the UK is not without historical precedent. Throughout British history, periods of significant social and economic change have often been accompanied by tensions over immigration and national identity. The post-World War II era, for example, saw the arrival of large numbers of immigrants from former British colonies, leading to debates over integration, citizenship, and the nature of British identity.
I want to go to the UK because I'm afraid of deportation in Germany. Already they try to deport me, and that's why I left.
Ahmed's one of a number of Iraqi Kurds Skies met recently who've paid smugglers to get to the UK after Germany toughened up its deportation rules.
During the 1960s and 1970s, these debates often centered around issues of race and ethnicity, with figures like Enoch Powell famously warning of the dangers of unchecked immigration in his controversial Rivers of Blood speech. Powell's rhetoric, which drew on fears of cultural and demographic change, resonated with many at the time, but it also sparked widespread condemnation and contributed to a national conversation about race, immigration, and multiculturalism. The lessons of this period are instructive for understanding the current moment. Powell's warnings, though influential, ultimately failed to reflect the resilience and adaptability of British society. The UK has, over time, become a more diverse and inclusive nation, and the contributions of immigrants have played a vital role in its economic and cultural development. However, the debates of the past also remind us that immigration is a deeply emotive issue that can easily be manipulated for political ends.
A word as well, Theo, on the border force yesterday, UK border force returning channel migrants to France for the first time. This sparked quite, I'm sure you're more than aware of this, it sparked a lot of people saying, wow, they're actually doing what Reform UK said they should do. They're returning migrants back to France. But of course, the story, as it turned out, wasn't quite as black and white as that.
The danger of repeating the mistakes of the past is that it risks alienating large segments of the population and entrenching divisions that could take generations to heal. The challenge for leaders like Starmer is to learn from history by recognizing the legitimate concerns of citizens while also promoting a vision of a more inclusive and united society. This requires not only policy solutions, but also a commitment to building bridges between different communities and fostering a sense of shared purpose and identity. Developing a coherent and effective immigration policy is one of the most complex challenges facing any government. In the UK, this challenge is particularly acute given the country's historical ties to former colonies, its role as a global financial center, and its position at the crossroads of Europe and the wider world. Immigration policy must balance a range of competing priorities, including economic needs, social cohesion, national security, and humanitarian obligations. One of the key criticisms leveled by Robinson against Starmer is that the Prime Minister has failed to articulate a clear and decisive immigration policy. Robinson argues that the government's approach has been too reactive and piecemeal, lacking the strategic vision needed to address the root causes of migration.
You would ban all Muslims?
I would temporarily halt Muslim immigration to this country until we get a grip of the problem. I differentiate Muslims from Islam.
Right.
Okay?
But what you don't do...
differentiate Muslims
Muslims are people. Islam is an idea.
Yeah.
Islam's an idea, a bad idea.
And
Islam
Muslims
is a faith.
follow.
No, it's an idea.
It's a faith.
It's an idea that you can change your mind.
And to ensure that immigration is managed in a way that benefits the UK as a whole. In reality, however, developing such a policy is far from straightforward. Immigration is driven by a complex array of factors, including economic disparities, conflict, climate change, and global mobility. Addressing these drivers requires not only national policies, but also international cooperation and coordination. For example, reducing the pressures that drive people to migrate often involves addressing issues such as poverty, corruption, and human rights abuses in migrants' countries of origin. At the same time, there are domestic considerations that must be taken into account. The UK's economy relies on immigration to fill key labor shortages, particularly in sectors such as healthcare, agriculture, and hospitality. Restricting immigration too severely could have negative consequences for economic growth and public services. However, there is also a need to ensure that immigration is managed in a way that does not overwhelm local communities or strain public resources. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, who's responsible for the anti-immigration riots? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.